There's been a massive show of support for ousted MP Bruce Flegg, with more than a dozen of his colleagues giving him a guard of honour just days after party bosses gave him the sack.
Their party showed him the door, so the least politicians could do was show Bruce Flegg some respect and a little defiance for the faceless few who sacked him from MPs facing an angry revolt of their own.
I share the Premier's view. Obviously, pre-selections are a matter for the party, but I do think we should be backing our sitting MPs.
Our electricity! Not for sale! Our assets! Not for sale!
The government voted unanimously to lease our electricity network, not, they say, sell it or privatise it.
These are our assets, Mark. They're not yours to sell or lease. Exactly the same thing.
From now on, everywhere an LNP politician goes, a union protest goes with them, and Labor doesn't mince words.
This government is now toxic. Campbell Newman is now toxic.
So here's the deal. We lease our ports and electricity network and make $37 billion. $25 billion goes straight to paying off debt, leaving $8.6 to spend, however the government wants. And this is new, a $3.4 billion cost of living fund.
This is a fantastic proposal for Queenslanders to consider.
The Premier compares his asset plan with the billion-dollar sell-off of Brisbane Airport that held out building an extra runway despite customer complaints. As for a guarantee, this deal won't mean higher electricity prices.
We're talking about cost of living in the coming days, so watch this space.
The election starts now. Shane Doherty, 9 News.
And Treasurer Tim Nicholls joins us now. Good evening, Treasurer.
Good evening, Andrew. Good evening to your listeners.
In 2010 in Parliament you said, and I quote, a 99-year lease is as good as giving away the farm. In other words, the same as privatising. What's changed your opinion?
Well, what we're talking about today is an important and exciting way of dealing with the $80 billion worth of Labor debt, and importantly we're talking about a 50-year lease, and anyone who leases a property, leases a house, knows that at the end of that lease you get it back. So today we're talking about a 50-year lease with a 49-year option if strict conditions are met, and importantly the asset returning to the control of Queenslanders at the end of that time.
All right,
and we're able to...
But what happens, Treasurer, when the revenue from those electricity profits dries up? I mean, can you guarantee taxes won't rise to make up the shortfall?
Well, what we've been about is actually controlling the increase in the cost of living, and that's why we've done things like freeze car registration, reduce the public transport fares. For the first time ever, public transport fares are going down by 5% in a month's time. We're continuing to work on cost of living issues, but importantly, we can't do anything if we don't pay down some of that accumulated $80 billion worth of debt, and that's what our asset leasing program enables us to do.
All right, what about power prices then? Can you guarantee that they won't rise?
Well, what we've seen in the past is that power prices have increased while these businesses have been in government ownership, and the most recent report from Ernst & Young showed that power prices for the networks increased far more in Queensland and New South Wales, where those businesses are owned by the government, than they did in Victoria and South Australia, where they haven't been. So ownership doesn't determine power price rises, it's how well those businesses are run. We're working on that, but there's more to be done.
Thanks, Treasurer.